Good afternoon. It's Friday, the 16th September 2016, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio, Mike Robinson. And today we're not able to include David Scott with Northern Exposure. David has got some other commitments. Well, weather pretty good, and of course a very hot day across the country yesterday, but we survived, Mike.
Yep.
We did. Okay, well, let's kick off with
Israel. So this is Matthew Rycroft, who of course is the permanent representative of the United Nations for the United Kingdom. And he was giving off a little bit about Israel, apparently, very gently. He said, since the quartet reports came out in July, we've seen a worrying acceleration, so it's only worrying, of Israel's policies in the West Bank. Far from stopping settlement expansion as the quartet recommended, we have seen Israel push forwards with plans of over 1,500 settlement units, as well as the continued demolition of Palestinian structures. The numbers speak for themselves. Over 800 structures destroyed this year, 1,000 people displaced, 500 children among them. So once again, I hope that we can all urge Israel. So hope and urging, that's what we need to do. We don't go and bomb Israel like we do with Syria. If we don't like what the Syrian leadership's doing, we go and bomb them, but we don't bomb Israel, Brian.
Well, that's because Syria hasn't got conservative friends of Syria driving away in the background as the Israelis have.
Indeed.
I think is the main problem.
So despite Israel's activities, he went on to say, we deplore the incitement on both sides of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, including any comments that could stir up hatred and prejudice. So let's not worry about actions. We'll only worry about comments, because actions, bulldozing people's homes, schools, and stuff like this, that couldn't possibly stir up hatred and prejudice. Only comments do that, apparently. And he went on to say, it's estimated, he started talking about Gaza then, it's estimated that 90% of Gaza's water is not fit for consumption or even agricultural use. I just thought in an arid country, that's a pretty spectacular admission, but the best that Matthew Rycroft can do is to urge and suggest, and no condemnation.
No, because they're not interested in the people in Gaza, as we're going to, I think, see in a minute. What's happening around the world centres around Israel, but we don't want to talk about that.
No, indeed. And as we mentioned yesterday, of course, the message is sent loud and clear. Record US military aid deal for Israel, signed yesterday. $38 billion. Well, it hasn't all gone Netanyahu's way necessarily, because ex-Prime Minister Barak is absolutely vilifying him because really they could have done a lot better than $38 billion, Brian. The damage produced by Netanyahu's irresponsible management of the relations with the White House is now fully manifest. So Barak really upset that Israel only getting $4 billion a year for the next period, because they could have had so much more. I mean,
there's nothing you can say, Mike. It is so obvious now what is actually taking place. We've got this massive Israeli lobby inside the British government. We've got the same power of lobby inside the US government, and disappointed that you've only got $38 billion not to help improve the water in Gaza. That's not what it's going to be used for. This is going to be used for weapons, of course, so that they can continue the extermination and the aggressive agenda into Syria and other surrounding countries.
Well, speaking of the military, then let's move on to exercise Venerable Gauntlet. This is UK forces participating in this in Germany, in Sennelager, and the Defence Minister, that's Earl Howe, he has been commenting on this and really saying this is great, because this is bringing together 3,000 troops from 14 NATO nations. It's the first major exercise before the UK takes the lead in the NATO multinational force in 2017, and that's the Very High Readiness Joint Task Force, LAND, and that's going to be ready to be deployed in days to protect NATO allies. Apparently 3,000 people. Troops is going to protect all of NATO's allies very rapidly. And this particular exercise is designed to improve how the different nations operate together. It began on the 5th of September, and it has seen soldiers from the 26th Regiment of the Royal Artillery using the Spanish 105mm light gun.
Yes.
You know, so we're not even using British weapons.
Well, I can tell you that NATO was always interesting to take part in those exercises. If you were with the Americans, Canadians, Dutch and Germans, life was fairly straightforward. But the moment you start to bring in other nationalities, you brought in the Italians, for example, or the French, it got very, very complicated. And to say that you've got 3,000 troops from 14 different countries playing with each other's toys, this is exactly what this is. This isn't a venerable gauntlet, this is vulnerable gauntlet. And the thing is a joke, and I've got to move on to a bit more defence stuff here. Yeah. But this is just, at the moment, outrageous, that the spin on the British public, that the British military capability is still there, when clearly it's not.
Indeed.
Okay, well, let's put some meat on those bones then and have a look at this little report, which has just popped out from the House of Commons Defence Committee. Now, remember, of course, the Defence Committee is staffed by people with excellent qualifications like social service backgrounds. But here it is, Russia, Implications for UK Defence and Security. You can get this as a PDF document online, so I'd encourage people not to believe our analysis, to go and have a look at it themselves. But very quickly, it says that those nasty Russians, Mike, have caught us out, that everybody was very surprised when things happened in Eastern Europe and Russia invaded Ukraine. That's first off in the summary. So despite, what is it, £2 billion budget for GCHQ and MI6, MI5 as well, okay. So despite that £2 billion budget, despite the military budget, we just didn't know those nasty Russians were going to do anything in Eastern Europe. And just to make sure that they are nasty, down here it says that, well, the Russians have been doing outrageously aggressive things like flying their planes close to UK, and bringing warships close to UK. And this is really dangerous, nasty stuff. The fact that this has been going on by all nations for the last 50 years is not mentioned in the report. This is all spin, that something astonishing has taken place with the Russians. So we're spending billions of pounds to find out what people are doing overseas. But GCHQ, totally unaware of what's going on in Russia, we were caught out. We were caught with our trousers down. So here we are, conclusions and recommendations, and this one is pretty interesting. Here's the spin. Whilst Russia cites self-defense against NATO expansion as reason for its increased military spending, its rapid militarization can alternatively be viewed as mobilization against not only external threats, but also internal dissent. This is brilliantly crafted language, Mike, because, of course, if you analyse what has taken place, it is indeed aggression by NATO, which Russia has responded to. But we're going to ignore that. We're going to view it differently. We're going to view it that actually this is Russia mobilising against us, but also their own people.
So there's a bit of a reframing going on there.
There's a lot of reframing. And this one is quite delightful because now we get the evidence. Just have a look at this. We've got Russia's military intervention in Syria has reduced the likelihood of Assad being overthrown. Long a Western objective. But I thought Mr. Cameron was in Parliament saying that regime change was absolutely not what he was about in Syria. It was protecting the Syrian people.
I think we can just assume he was lying.
Well, either he was lying, or maybe he was misinformed, or the Defence Committee is misinformed or lying, or perhaps they're telling the truth. But it's well worth reading this document, and as you'll see, it becomes more and more outrageous. Here's a little bit more. It says, during the course of our inquiry, we received written evidence from 18 individuals and organisations, and they held 4 oral sessions. And then down at the bottom, it whinges, despite continued requests for members with the Russian government, their engagement with our visit was at best limited. But look who they were talking to. they were looking at human rights activists and opposition politicians. So you imagine if the Russians sent a delegation to UK and they simply said, well, we're going to cruise around the country, actually having a look at who's dissenting to the government. And then when we've done that, we'd like to have a word with you, Miss May, to see what you have to say. So if we just pop that one back up, Theo, please, just highlight this. Sorry, I have to bring in that again. But what is going on here? This is the very government that has spent months insulting President Putin, many years, in fact, this has been going on for. And now they're saying, well, those nasty Russian politicians wouldn't actually talk to us at all. So this is where the detail comes in, because if you get towards the end of the article, we've got an appendix, comparison between Russian, UK, and US military hardware. Now, if you have a look at the figures here, it's pretty easy to see why all of a sudden we can't have a House of Commons Defence Committee talking about the British situation, because it's untenable. So if you look at the relative UK-Russian force levels, I mean, we are looking at more or less a tea party. Leave aside nuclear weapons in the British arsenal, we've now got decimated British armed forces unable to carry out proper military operations in the European theatre for more than a few weeks. So what do? Well, of course, we then have to list the US force levels. And Mike, this is the piece I've been consistently saying, that of course it's our prime ministers stand on the world stage and create the wars. Who's going to do the dying? Well, it's going to be US forces. And this is what Cameron, of course, was doing in the background by his 2010 Strategic Defence Review, cuts in British manpower, cuts in equipment, getting rid of the aircraft carriers, no fixed-wing aircraft for those carriers, getting rid of the maritime patrol aircraft, getting rid of the amphibious support ships. All of that coupled with aggressive overseas action in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria and Libya. But the government was a little bit surprised that the Russians had been carrying on and doing what was credible policy. So who are the people that cobbled together this report? Well, let's have a look. We've got a variety of individuals. Please go and have a look at these people yourselves and say, who are they? What are their allegiances? What do they really believe? And why are they being brought in order to help create British defence policy? So we've got Mr. Lucas here, Law Department of the Jagiellonian, if I pronounce that, but Krakow. He holds a Master of Arts degree in International Relations and European Studies from the Central European University in Budapest. So what are his allegiances? Do you think to the European Union, Mike?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, or we can say no idea. And then we've got at least 4 individuals from Chatham House, the organisation that specialises in having secret meetings behind closed doors. But these people are academics. And you say, what's their real experience? Well, this man has got some with NATO. He's been into Moscow. But why was he selected or brought in? We can bring in another one here, James Scher. And how do these people get brought in? We don't know, because the Defence Committee refuses to say. We've got a French lady here. Now, she's supposed to be an expert in the Soviet era. I couldn't find a picture of her, but she has written some books going back to 1994. Now, apparently, she's helping to devise British defence policy.
Good.
Okay. Well, here we are. It gets better, because we've got Doctor Bobo Lo is also part of it. I don't know a great deal about him, but I did have a look at one of his videos, and I was intrigued with this statement. He says, with regard to what's going on in the world, the biggest challenge facing Russia and Putin is to adapt to the accelerating pace of history. So apparently history is accelerating, Mike. We need to get Putin to adapt to it in order to sort out British defence policy. This is Alice in Wonderland. It's real, but it's Alice in Wonderland. Or have a look at this agency that's been involved in this document. We've got Statecraft, the Institute for Statecraft. Don't worry, it's a charity. Here's the gentleman who set it up, Chris Donnelly. He's an expert on Eastern European affairs. He did a bit of time in the territorial army, so presumably he knows one end of a rifle from the other, and he's been teaching. And now he is called forward to help set defence policy. And this is where the thing gets really rubbed in, because we've got the Daily Mail crowing over the fact we've got the 100th anniversary of the Battle of the Somme and the use of the first tank. We're now parading the Challenger 2 as the state-of-the-art equipment. But of course, we haven't got enough tanks to sustain a military campaign properly. But the Daily Mail doesn't want to talk to that at all. So treason in Westminster, that successive governments have reduced the ability of Britain to defend each other, and they've done that on the basis of advice from independent people, all manner of nations, many charities. It would be laughable if it wasn't so serious, I think, is the answer.
Yes.
Well, what are we going to do about these events in UK? The good news is people are now beginning to mobilise. So I'm just going to say that the British Constitution Group meeting in Glastonbury last night was a success. I've got some comments here about the meeting. People were having success in pointing out that council tax was being used to fund terrorism abroad. So people are now beginning to withhold council tax on the basis it's being used by the British government to fund terrorist activities. There was, quote, a near unanimous recognition of the threat posed to every individual and family in the British Isles as a result of criminal networks running the country. And what people are certainly indicating is they are now sure that those criminal networks are operating through Westminster. And good news for the British Constitution Group conference in Winchester on the 19th of November. So the tickets are already going for those. So interesting that you put on an event in Glastonbury, relatively country area. What are people angry about? What they see as criminal activity at the heart of British government.
Right. Today,
the saviour.
The saviour, yes. Today is, of course, the UKIP conference, and Nigel Farage giving his last speech as leader. And there you have it. We did it. We got our country back. He says, I'm sorry for anybody that is going to take offence at what I'm about to say, but this is the most disingenuous beginning to a speech, self-congratulatory and disingenuous, because, of course, he hasn't done it, and we haven't got our country back, and we are absolutely still within the European Union. The process hasn't even begun. It's going to take several years, even if it does begin. And what Nigel Farage has never done, of course, is to highlight the other constitutional changes that are a much bigger threat to the United Kingdom than the EU is. For example, the devolution agenda, the constitutional reform agenda, the fact that the union is absolutely being stripped apart, TTIP and other trade deals, the financial system, he absolutely refuses to criticise. He doesn't call for Glass-Steagall. He won't discuss Bradbury Pound. And of course, EU military integration, he has given some lip service to and has mentioned it from time to time, but not in any serious way, Brian. So this was difficult to watch for me, because
I think I could tell that by your face, actually,
yes,
Mike, while you were watching it. But this man is outrageous at this critical time, isn't there? There's over 4 million UKIP voters out there who are sitting, waiting for leadership to take on the government over Brexit. And what did this man do? First of all, said, I've got to run away because I've been threatened. And then he turns up under the spotlight in the States. Really useful piece of leadership. But giving the message that we've succeeded, there's no more work to be done, that is a dangerous message, in my opinion. But in the meantime, as I say, other agendas continue. And Alan Duncan was giving a speech yesterday to the Brookings Institute, highlighting
exactly where Britain is in the world. And he said the referendum result 12 weeks ago came as a shock to many. It was not the result we had either wanted or predicted in government, but I want to assure you that it is not going to be the disaster for the UK or the rest of the world that some doomsayers are suggesting. Let's not underestimate the changes that have already taken place from a standing start on the morning of the 24th of June after the vote the day before when David Cameron announced his resignation. We've seen a significant overhaul of the machinery of government, the choice of a new Prime Minister, a major reshuffle of senior ministerial positions, the creation of 2 new government departments and changes to some others. All these changes were put smoothly into operation by our excellent non-political civil service without any disruption to the running of the country. Over the next 2 to 3 years, we will negotiate the manner of our departure from the EU and start to construct a new relationship with European neighbours. Now, this will represent a fundamental change in our legal relationship with the EU, but not our outward-looking view of the world. And when the British people voted to leave the EU, they did not opt to withdraw from the United Nations Security Council or NATO. They did not pull the plug on our membership of G20 or G7 or the Commonwealth, and that's the key point, I think, here. And he goes on to talk about the proud history as a trading nation, and that the Prime Minister has set out her ambitious agenda to see the UK become the global leader in free trade when she attended the G20 summit last week. So, this is one of the key subjects, this global leadership in free trade, because, of course, what Theresa May is talking about is TTIP, the policies behind TTIP being rolled out on a global basis and Britain leading the way on that. Extremely dangerous. And yes.
So I've got a point, carry on. Sorry.
And just to reinforce that, the Express article today, open for business, UK ready to form trade deals outside the EU before triggering Article 50. Now, of course, the EU is saying that would be an illegal act if we did that, because we're bound by the treaties that we are still involved in, because, of course, we have not left the EU. And as Theresa May has said many, many times, we will stand by our obligations for as long as we are members of the EU. So nothing has changed, and we have not succeeded in getting our country back from the EU or from any other corporate interest for that matter.
Absolutely true. And I'm watching some of the comments coming in via our chat box, and people are saying, well, if it wasn't for Nigel Farage, we wouldn't have achieved what we've achieved. But of course, we've got a really dangerous situation now because many people think Brexit has been achieved. So they're already putting their feet up, having a cup of tea, when the reality is, of course, that utter deceit by the British government means that there's no movement forward to take us out of the European Union. So what are the 4 million UKIP voters being asked to do? Are they starting to bombard the government? Are they campaigning at local Conservative headquarters? Where is that campaign to expose the deceit over Brexit? Well, of course, there isn't a campaign because Nigel Farage is not leading a campaign. So I see this as one of the most dangerous points that we're in. We've got people talking Brexit, but as you're saying, Mike, there isn't Brexit, and Theresa May is showing that she's got no intention of pushing Brexit forward.
Absolutely, and of course, devolution, the cities agenda, this is a key aspect of the other policies that are continuing to go ahead despite the diversion of Brexit. So this was an interesting little article in Reuters. Sadiq Khan backs Clinton for US president. They're saying London's first Muslim mayor, Sadiq Khan, voiced support for Democratic president nominee Hillary Clinton on Thursday, warning that anti-Muslim views like those espoused by Donald Trump, quotes, play into the hands of Islamic State. Now, this is less interesting than the fact that he was, in fact, in the United States, and he's doing a tour of the United States. He was speaking at the council, the Chicago Council of Global Affairs yesterday, this. I'll just describe how they describe him. They say that in May, Khan won London's mayoral election and made history by becoming the first mayor of Muslim faith of a major Western capital. His victory was in the face of what had been, by most accounts, an acrimonious election characterized by divisive rhetoric over his background. Now that he is arguably the most powerful Muslim politician in the Western world, Khan is setting out his position on one of the biggest challenges cities around the world face, the breakdown of social integration. And so it goes on. And really, what we're seeing here is this, again, I have to reiterate this once again, this idea of localism. It's not localism because these metro mayors, these city-states, and the thinking that's driving the creation of these is talking about global governance, global government, a global parliament of mayors, of the global council, the Chicago Council for Global Affairs. This is globalist policy being affected at a local level. It's extremely dangerous, but we don't hear Nigel Farage talking about this.
For a reason, I believe.
Absolutely. But let's continue with it because, of course, here's Osborne launching his new think tank, the Northern Powerhouse Partnership. This morning he was on the BBC and he is staying in the Commons, apparently, according to the BBC here, to fight for the things he cares about, and that's particularly devolution in the Northern Powerhouse. He says that he doesn't want to write his memoirs just yet because he doesn't know how the story ends. So in other words, he's hinting he's going to be around for quite a long time. He's saying that Theresa May had a bit of a wobble over the Northern Powerhouse project, but he's launched his new think tank to press ahead with it. He said that if we're going to end the North-South divide, we do need a partnership with national government. At the same time, we have to understand that we can't just rely on Whitehall 200 miles away to make the decisions for us.
Yeah.
So,
but this man's not interested in the North-South divide, right? He's interested in building a global power structure, which
absolutely.
is what those city-states are about, and the powerhouse regions. And sorry, can I just add, he's going to create another think tank. This is exactly the same lobbying vehicle that's being used to drive in this fictitious defence policy. So you just create another one. Where's the money going to come from? George Soros, Open Society, or the major banks?
Just before we leave this, if we put that back on a sec, he's Botoxed. He's Botoxed up to the eyelids, in my opinion. there's no question about it.
Or perhaps he's eased off the Diet Coke for a bit, and that's improved his skin
complexion.
tone. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, moving on then. Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank being slapped with a $14 billion fine by the Department of Justice in the United States. Their shares have fallen sharply today, allegedly because they are saying they will not pay that. They're saying that they do not expect to settle the claims for anything like $14 billion, and they have no intent, is the words that were used, anywhere near the numbers cited. The negotiations are only just beginning. The bank expects that they will lead to an outcome similar to those of peer banks that have settled at material lower amounts. Well, actually, Bank of America paid $17 billion for the same issue. Goldman's, only paid $5, but Bank of America paid significantly more. So it's not an unprecedented amount. And of course, this was for the mis-selling of mortgage securities. Banking scandals continue. It never seems to draw to a conclusion. Of course, Deutsche Bank's main problem at the moment is that they don't have $14 billion to pay anyone. So that would be the main reason why they can't accede to this offer from the Department of Justice.
Yeah, but it's put across, isn't it, as if they pay, as if a person actually pays out. But of course, nobody's going to lose out of this who is a real human being. It's simply putting the pressure on the corporation itself.
Yes.
Well, who's causing the problem? This was an article from a couple of days ago, which I picked up on. It's the Mail, Is Your Boss a Psychopath? And a study carried out by, I think, the Americans and the Australians, if I remember correctly, has basically says that up to 1 in 5 chief executive officers have got high levels of psychopathic traits. And these are some of the things that they're talking about. Narcissism, tendencies of attention-seeking, charm, vanity, grandiose, yet low self-esteem and a willingness to manipulate others. We've got Machiavellianism, coldness, immoral thinking, long-term manipulation, blunt practicality, and hunger for money, success, or power. And psychopathy, antisocial behaviours, thrill-seeking, manipulation, etc. So they were pinning the blame on the corporations. But I thought if you look at those attributes and you look at our MPs at the moment, you are looking down the barrel of the gun, as it were. These are the traits of the people that we've got in power. And it's no wonder that the policies coming out of these people are not creating a better society. They're creating more division and breakdown and chaos. Well, I'll explain why you need that chaos. But have a look at Common Purpose, of course. This is one of the key organisations that's been training our top civil servants. And look at the language. This has come out of Julia Middleton's book, Beyond Authority, which I've got in front of me. Harass and wear down the opponents of change. Now, remember, that's her change. So that they decide defending the status quo is not worth the hassle. It's easier to go with you. So what's this lady's claim to fame? Well, she worked for Demos a bit and the Work Foundation for a while. Of course, she was educated overseas. But now she's on the world stage as a leader telling us how we should run our country. And this is what the chaos is about, because in her book, this is one of the quotes, Karl Marx said that a new organism had to come from within the dying one. So if you want to know why we are in a stage of massive breakdown in UK at the moment, because the policy being driven deep into the civil service and of course within the political structure of Westminster is to cause disruption, chaos and breakdown, so that the new system, the communitarian, this is the city-states, big society, this can be brought in from the rubble of that chaos. And it's pretty nasty what they're prepared to do. Another quote from her book, sometimes if it gets messy, you might have to run over them, undermine them, bully them, or buy them off effectively. So this is the sort of language being injected into the civil service. And is it any wonder that when we now phone up the civil service to ask why children are being taken away from their parents, apparently unlawfully, you are treated as an absolute piece of dirt on the end of the phone. This is as a result of the Common Purpose mental reframing. Well, that reframing went through the political agenda as well, of course. We'd just like to remind people that Nick Clegg, this immensely powerful politician, he is desperate to destroy any mention or movement on Brexit. He's been hiding in the background for many months. He said that Brexit is like a great big detonation. Basically, you have a detonation under a building, a bit of debris drops down and everybody says, thank that's gone. But his argument is that, well, Brexit, it hasn't happened yet. But here's the statement, we haven't left yet. I'm somewhat nonplussed by the people who say, look, the sky hasn't fallen on our heads. All the predictions, we haven't left. Well, he's actually telling the truth for a change. So all the people getting excited at Brexit at the moment, complete smokescreen, and here's Clegg telling the truth for a change. And in that article, it also said this, Mr. Clegg also predicted that International Trade Secretary Liam Fox, who was handed one of the key Brexit posts, would resign in a huff in the next 18 months because he will realise he doesn't have a job. Well, the squabbling amongst these boys is incredible because they're now actually having to tell the truth publicly. And why should Clegg be so protective of Europe? Well, let's remember it was Leon Britton who gave Clegg his introduction to politics, and he employed him as an office aide when he was a trade commissioner in Brussels. I don't know what the duties of an office aide to Mr. Britton were, Mike.
Would you like to speculate?
I would like to speculate. I would very much like to speculate what Mr. Clegg may or may not have been asked to do. But let's remind ourselves that, of course, it was Mr. Britton who said suggestions he'd failed to deal adequately with the bundle of papers containing allegation of serious impropriety he received from MP Mr. Dickens were completely without foundation. So child abuse becomes impropriety, and we gently smooth over the top, and hey presto, it's all gone away. Very dirty dealing. This is the book. do not pay more than £1 for this book. You can get it for as little as 50p. On one hand, it's worth nothing. On the other hand, this gives you the language that's being used to train our top civil service. And of course, what does Ms. Middleton say? She says that she's learned a great deal from East German bankers who have contributed so much to love and well-being of people within our society. Those latter things I've just added. But she believes that the bankers are wonderful people. She quotes Lehman Brothers. She thinks they're a role model for young people, but they've unfortunately gone bust, I think, Mike.
So.
Yeah. So if you haven't read this book, have a read about how to bully people, harass them, to make sure they don't get in the way of your new political agenda. And she also says that, well, really you need a fifth column on the inside in order to get the change she wants, not what the British public wants. So this is dangerous stuff. And remember that Karl Marx quote that to create the new communitarian society, the transformation, you need to make sure the old society is destroyed. Well, it's Friday. We better end on a positive note. I'm going to say that next Wednesday we've got our UK column meeting, which is locally in the George Hotel, Plimpton. From that meeting on, we're going to try and change the structure by having a more formal presentation. I will be leading the first one off, talking about the harsh realities of the breakdown of law, order and justice in UK, because of course this is the key point, that we are being run by a cabal of criminals in Westminster, and until we reassert the rule of law, we're not going to be moving anywhere very fast, whether it's our defence, the NHS or Brexit. We will be asking for a £5 donation on the door. That is entirely up to you if you attend, whether or not you choose to do that. But overall, we are seeing more and more people realising that it's a breakdown of law and order, which is the key problem in UK.
Indeed.
And we're waiting for news of the trial of Melanie Shaw. We learnt a couple of days ago that there was to be a sentencing hearing for Melanie in Peterborough this morning. We still don't know what the actual charges against her were. We do know that Melanie has not been allowed into court. She's simply been allowed to use a video Skype link with the respective courts. She is still being represented by a legal firm that she does not want to represent her, but they have simply been imposed for the court. So if you want a measure of the scale of the breakdown of justice in UK, no better than to look at child abuse and Melanie Shaw, who's now into her 17th week in prison on remand, simply because she dared expose what was happening to little children in UK. And she is one of a number of witnesses who've mentioned the name of a certain high-profile British politician, and what's your reward? Banged up in prison. We'll leave it there. Can we do something? Yes, we can, but it requires a great many people to take action, reasonable and appropriate. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back at the same time on Monday. Bye-bye.